Hello,
Ciao Belen.
how are you?
We're fine. You? How's it going?
It's going well. It's going well.
What about your moving?
All good. Slowly settling in Bogota.
Okay,
And yeah, already have an apartment and we already have the office where I'm sitting now. So exciting.
super.
All good on your side?
Yeah, we're all good.
Super. Good.
So let's
So
give the others a couple of minutes to connect.
yeah,
Then
super.
Stefano and me will
So
say, yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to test to share my screen in the
Yeah, go ahead.
meantime to see that. Uh, okay. Okay, it's not allowing. Why? Okay, provide permits, 1 second. Okay, let me try again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, super, super. So we can start, I can start into this session, and here you will speak, Lorenzo, or Luca, or Stefania, to give you.
Me and Stefania will say a couple of things about the whole program, the sessions, but just a couple of minutes will be enough.
Okay, perfect.
Ciao Patrick,
Ciao, buongiorno.
long time.
Very long
Ciao
time.
Patrick.
Volevo salutarvi. Hi, Belen.
Hello.
Ciao Belen. Sorry Belen, I seen Patrick, but I wanted to say hello to you first.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
So I don't know in Milano, but in Zurich it's fucking cold.
Cold?
Yes.
Say that even in Milan it's colder than the last couple of weeks. We're at 28 degrees. That for us is sort of already happening. But yeah. Temperatures are much better now. But we have a super big storm yesterday here. Ciao Stefania.
Ciao, ciao a tutti. Hello to everybody. Ciao.
Hello.
So we'll wait for another minute and then I think we can start.
Super.
Okay, so I think we can start. I'll just give you a brief introduction and build a bit of a bridge between this session and the board of the directors meeting that we had last week. As we said during our last BOD, this is a first very practical step that we're taking to the direction of actually delivering on our ESG plan. The plan called for some training, both to the team, but also to our BOD members, statutory advisors. And we thought, okay, let's hit the ground running and come up with a training plan that is not just for one session on a yearly basis, but let's design something that has more impact and in our view, more, let's say, practical results than a single session. And thus we decided to actually have a chat with our friends at iGravity. We represented iGravity back during our BOD. And together with Belen Martin, who's here with us and that will lead our sessions, we designed this program, these knowledge pills that we're going to deliver in the next year and a half, one per quarter, in which we're going to cover different topics regarding not only ESG, but let's say everything that all the different depth that there are around this area. We will also have a sort of a mid-program review, survey review, knowledge check in between, as our ESG plan called for. And I don't know, I think I'm very happy to actually start this journey together with Belen and Patrick and the rest of the iGravity team. I'm really thankful to see also our, let's say, such a participation in the first session. And without any further ado, I'll leave the stage to Belen.
Super. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. And thank you everyone for participating in our first session. I think this is very exciting, and I think we have a long way ahead, no, with our knowledge pill series. And I wanted to highlight that the focus of this series is to be very practical, hands-on. So please, participation is highly encouraged. Please, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to participate, share your thoughts, ask questions, please do so by either raising your hand or just unmuting yourself and jumping ahead. Before we jump into today's session, I wanted to introduce myself. I know some of you, but I don't think I know all of you. I think by now you all know iGravity, and it was explained during your BOD about our collaboration, but very shortly, iGravity is an impact investor and also an advisory firm specialized in impact investing and also innovative financing for development. And my role in iGravity is that I oversee sustainability, ESG, and impact measurement management capacities across the different investment facilities that we manage. And I also provide advisory to various clients on these topics, no? For example, from sustainability strategy to setting up an impact measurement management frameworks, and so on and so forth. And prior to joining iGravity, I've been gaining experiences in diverse fields, such as working in a family office, working in banking, in startups, and also in academia. So with that, we're going to kickstart the topic of today, which is around ESG, impact, and sustainability, and trying to understand what are the main differences, interrelations. We're going to be discussing real-world examples to see in a practical way how these terms land, no? And why is it important now, and then why these terms are so oftenly coming here. So Lorenzo already introduced this, our training calendar, but you will see that we have a diverse range of topics around ESG, sustainability, and impact, and we already have the date set for these sessions. And so as I was already anticipating, the goal of this session is to provide an understanding of ESG, impact, and sustainability that we currently see very often in the investing space, no? And normally we see these terms being used interchangeably, and the focus of today is really to understand their definitions and how they interrelate, and the practicalities and its implications in the investing landscape. And as I said, please, interruptions, questions, super welcomed. So we're going to be starting first with ESG, that I think is a term that it's being discussed currently at Rancilio Cube, no? And you've been discussing it a lot at the BOD and within the team. So I will just go a bit quickly through it, as I don't want to focus so much on theory, but a bit more on practical examples and the main differences. But as we know, ESG, it's a framework that focuses on assessing risk and opportunities on three main dimensions. Those dimensions are the environmental dimension, in topics such as climate. Here it's very commonly around the management of GHG emissions, around circular economy, waste. Then the social dimension, no? Which is around labor conditions, diversity, human rights, especially in the workplace, and around governance, no? So the focus of ESG is around risk management, assessing opportunities alongside looking at long-term performance. ESG is inward looking, so it looks at how companies internally manage, operate their processes independently of the end product, no? And within ESG, that can be applied to different types of organizations. We also have what it's called ESG investing. So what is ESG investing? It's merely incorporating these three dimensions that we've been speaking about into the investment decision-making process. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we will have another session later on, or a training calendar, which will focus very practically on how these three factors are integrated into the investment cycle, no? So from screening until the assessment of an exit. So in that session, we will focus a bit more. But basically, ESG investing incorporates these three factors, these three dimensions into the traditional financial analysis, helping investors to identify companies that have mapped the ESG risk and have responsible strategies and good mitigation strategies to those risks. So I will pause for a second to see if there are any questions here. If not, I will proceed. And the next definition is impact investing, right? So I will start with something that might seem pretty basic, no? But what is impact, no? Because sometimes it's a bit of a buzzword that we all use in our day-to-day lives, saying this intervention has a lot of impact, or this is very impactful, no? But from an academic perspective, how do we define impact? Impact is defined as the change in an outcome caused by a certain activity on people and or planet. I really like this graph by the Investor's Guide to Impact of the University of Zurich, because we can clearly see impact, no, as the delta, no, in a very visual way. And here it's worth noting that impact, it's change. So it can be positive, negative, intended, or unintended. Then, similarly, as we did in the slide before, we have defined what's impact, and then what is impact investing? So I don't know how many of you are familiar with GIN, the Global Impact Investing Network, but it is the main authority in the impact investing landscape, and is the organization that is providing harmonization and foundations to this area of practice. So the GIN defines impact investing, impact investments as those that are made with intentionality, with explicit intention of generating, and here it's very important, measurable, positive, social, and or environmental change, while also seeking for a financial return. Okay, so we're looking to generate positive impact and positive financial return. So impact investors prioritize investments that drive positive change and at the same time address pressing social and environmental challenges. And here it's very commonly using the challenges as defined by the Sustainable Development Goals in the 2030 Agenda. And then when reading the GIN definition, I've highlighted the aspect of measurability, no? Of being able to measure change. So impact measurement and management is one of the core components of impact investing. Normally, we define impact measurement and management in 4 main blocks. Define impact, that it's mostly around the impact strategy. Measure impact, that it's around the definition of the KPIs, the reporting, having benchmarks, having targets in place. Then manage impact, that it's around how impact is embedded in the overall investment cycle, and this is reflected on how is impact integrated into the due diligence process, or how is impact formalized, for example, into the investment policies, into the sustainability policies. Impact measurement and management, it's instrumental in impact investing because it allows to identify and manage the positive and negative outcomes of the investment activity. Good. So I don't know how many of you have seen this type of visuals before, but I find it super interesting because it shows in a very practical way the spectrum, no, of investing, from traditional investing that seeks only for financial returns to philanthropical investments that are only looking for impact returns, right? That they're not seeking intentionally any financial returns. And here we can see in a very visual way how and where do we find the nuances, no, between ESG investing, sustainability investing, and impact investing, no? So if we start from the left side, we have the traditional investing, no need to explain, but one of the core components or differentiator here is the seeking of financial returns only. And then if we start moving a little bit towards the right, we have ESG, which can be divided into negative and positive screening. So excluding based on criteria, or positive screening, which is positively scoring across different industries and sectors. And then we have thematic investing, which will be deep diving a bit more in the upcoming slides, that it's mostly related to sustainable investing. And then if we move a bit more to the right, we have impact investing that we were just discussing before, that can be differentiated between fine and first, which are those investments that prioritize first the financial return, but also seek to generate measurable positive and environmental and social impact, or impact first, that are the focus is primarily on those positive changes on the environmental and social part, while then also seeking for financial results. And then we have philanthropic investments. Now, they are mostly about grants or donations that are not explicitly seeking for a financial return. So here I wanted to encourage you to participate by bringing some questions in, and also asking if you've seen this before, whether this is something new or something that you're very familiar with. Also maybe to drive a bit, spark a bit the conversation, looking at the spectrum, no, and the current challenges that we're facing today, and also with your knowledge, no, investing in the VC landscape. Where do you think that capital is most needed today, or if you're seeing any trends on your own, or you have some insights that you'd like to share?
So I'll start with the consideration that maybe will become a question, or let's say a thought that I just having. There is the following. So in some ways, I don't know whether the philanthropy side of things should actually be considered on the same line, on the same graph of with everything else that has a sort of a financial objective, right? Because on the philanthropy side of things, you're basically, let's say, implying that you're not actually, let's say, looking for a financial return, but you're just, let's say, doing philanthropy because of the impact, the positive impact it can have in terms of environment or social impact. And then on the other way, in my mind, I have this thought that, let's say, it all boils down to how good we are, it's a general we, in actually measuring the impact on any given investment, right? Because on a social side of things, you invest in something that is, I don't know, edtech or healthcare or biotech, which will definitely have a sort of a positive resonance into the world. But then how can you actually measure the impact of that specific activity? And I feel that the big hurdle, the big question around measuring, around impact investing, it's all about measuring it. And then, of course, we can come up with any sort of different measurement or framework. but I think there are many investments like that we do in our own portfolios that have a tremendous positive impact. But we have not only we at Rancilio, not only us at Rancilio Cube, but also the venture capital firms in which we do invest. We don't have any clue on how to effectively measure it and to make it, let's say, and to make that measurement framework, let's say, usable on other also investments. So I know my thoughts were pretty confused, but I hope the message came across.
Yeah, no, it came across, and I think that's a super good comments, no, and topics that you brought to the table, Lorenzo. And I agree, no, I think, and also especially in the VC space, there are many investments that have a lot of impact potential, no. And to answer a little bit to your question, I think we can go back a little bit to the definition of what makes an investment impactful, no. So one of the elements is, of course, around the measurability. Then in a second we can comment a bit on the case of VC, because it's indeed very challenging, no, in the space that you're operating on. But then there's around the intentionality, and many times around additionality, no. So as we were saying, impact can be positive, can be negative, intended or unintended, no. So normally the funds that are considered, for example, just to provide a fund, no, let's think of a specific example, has an impact strategy that signals that there's an intentionality, no, around this. And with that intentionality, then it comes the measurement, no, because you can have a lot of impact, but if it's not managed and it's not being done intentionally, then what is the point, no? Because at the same time it can be positive and it can be negative. So I think it all comes down first to the intentionality, and then we have the measurability and also the additionality. What do we mean when we say additionality? Typically, also impact investors bring to the table, and I think this is also very common in the VC space, because you're investing in such early companies or funds, a little bit more than finance, no, more than capital. So the idea of enabling the investments, no, with technical assistance or with some training and so on and so forth. And then exactly, no, the measurement part, it's very key, because as people normally say, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed, no. And in the VC space, it's very challenging, no. It's not impossible, because there are people doing a good job out there, but it's indeed very challenging, no, when trying to gather information from these companies that are so early stage, no, or for example, investing in very early stage technologies or health appliance, no, that you won't see the results in many times. And then going to your first point, no, around philanthropy, I think there are different ways to go about it, no. Whether it should be integrated in this overall spectrum or not, no. One can argue both ways, but we can also argue that there are philanthropic investments done in the way of, or in the shape of, innovative financing mechanisms, no. For example, there are instruments in impact-linked finance called SINCs, which are social impact incentives. There are grants that accompany investments, and those grants are linked to impact milestones or impact target, no. So capital is also dispersed upon the achievement of different impact milestones, no, and normally follows an investment logic, no, without expecting the financial return, but with the capital being conditional, no, to certain milestones, no, and within that logic as well. I don't know if it helps a bit to your questions or not at all.
No, absolutely, as always.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Anyone wants to add or has anything else to share on this topic? Or we can also move on. Good, let's move on. So as I said, anytime, please feel free to interact. So let's look a little bit closer into ESG investing and impact investing. So to put it into very practical and simple terms, we can differentiate or look at the differences based on the objectives and the measurement element that we were just discussing, that it's so relevant, no? So in terms of objectives, so impact investing is outward looking. It focuses on achieving measurable positive social and environmental outcomes beyond the internal operations of a company, while ESG investing is inward looking, no, and emphasizes on incorporating the ESG factors, mostly for risk management, and for that it is included in the investment decision making, no. And then in terms of measurement, ESG metrics are not designed to measure the positive impact on society or the environment, but they're focusing on rather assessing how well a company manages its ESG risk and its ESG priorities. While impact investing, as we were seeing, focuses, no, on analyzing the direct effects, no, outside of a company, of a fund, on the beneficiaries, on the different stakeholders that are being affected by the intervention. And we're going to see a practical example of two funds later on. One is focused on ESG, and the other one is focused on impact investing. So we're going to be able to see the differences in terms of metrics and reporting, and also a bit on the strategy around it. Yeah, so I will
Belen,
yes.
may I have my stupid question?
Yes.
Definition are valid globally or are accepted only in Europe? I mean, this kind of definition about impact ESG are also applicable to the US environment first.
Yes.
And second one, how is your perception about the importance that investors are giving to ESG and impact? I mean, did we reach in the past a sort of, I don't know, the point, the highest point in the attention, and now we are going a little bit backward, and it's something that, okay, it's nice to have, but it's less important than in the past, or it's still a hot topic?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I will start with your first question. That is not stupid at all. I think these definitions are universal. So they are not European based, but these are the so to say, worldwide accepted definitions. We can also later look at the SFDR definition, which is the one that applies in Europe, and it's a bit more narrowed down. But generally speaking, the definitions that I'm bringing here in these slides are universally accepted, or should be aligned with the main best practices. That normally it's, for example, for ESG, it's, we look normally from the investing side at the IFC performance standards. In impact investing, we look at the GIN guidelines, that it's a global impact investing networks. And then your second point on relevance and perception, I think it depends a lot on who you ask to, no? I think definitely there's been some shakes, especially in ESG, no? And for example, we've had in the sustainability, ESG, impact investing space, some shakes in the past years, for example, in the hot topic of carbon credits. And I don't know if you recall that there was a few years ago that there was this scandal that came out of double counting of carbon credits. So basically, it was just to put it in very simple terms, no? So carbon credits are used to offset the carbon emissions, right? So many companies, as part of the sustainability or the ESG strategy to mitigate the risk on heavy ESG emissions, they purchase ticket credits that can come from afforestation projects, from biodiversity projects to mitigate those risks. And it came out that some companies were selling these risks several times to several investors. So it generated a lot of untrust, lack of trust in the market, no? But I think this is a bit the isolation. I think ESG, it's more and more institutionalized. And I think it is a hot topic. And we're saying it is a hot topic because it's been institutionalized. So in Europe, it's now being regulated. The SFSDR is not anymore something that was being discussed at the European Union level, but it's something that it's active, and it affects all of us, no? And I think this is also part of why we're here, no? Because even though you're in Article 6, it also comes with some requirements, no? And I think it's happening. The regulation is happening. And I think the next one is impact investing. No, impact investing is also starting to be regulated. I think the market is also growing in the last years. We're seeing more and more capital targeting impact investing strategies, and it's slowly coming into regulation. No? That is, I think, a phase towards institutionalization. But this is a bit my perspective. No, maybe also others in the room want to share about their perspectives on this question, as I don't think there's like an absolute truth, no, around this.
No, I made this question because last week we were discussing with a fund that the investment thesis was based on CO2 emission. I mean, CO2 capturing, and it was a topic in venture capital that till 2 or 3 years ago was the topic. I mean,
Yeah.
the startup that would have that had invented, that found the formula to capture CO2 would have been the winner for the century. But now, I mean, nobody's talking anymore about that. And it's something that, yeah, it's a little bit out of the radar. It's not hot anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think some years ago we saw a huge trend, no, around startups focusing on GHG emission. Myself, I work also in a startup focused on carbon credits. So there's a startup that was focusing on a software to be able to track with MRV and satellite images the carbon credits. And at the moment it was huge, no? And there was a big momentum for those type of startups. And I think this momentum has been gone down a bit, no? But I think this is on the specific topic of GHG that I think now investors are realizing that it's a bit more complex than it seemed, no? Than only capturing the carbon emissions from the air. And there are many challenges, no? That this topic and this type of startups and funds are raising. One, for example, is regulation. That in every country, how you account for GHG emissions is totally different. Also, the rules on how a company can claim those credits and can offset those carbon credits, it's very different. There's not even a standard at the European level, no? So imagine. So I think this momentum has totally gone down, no? But that's one specific topic, and then the other topic is ESG, no? How to integrate the process and how to mitigate for those risks and map out this risk, no? At the end of the day, it's a risk and performance element to take into account into the investment. And we can see also in the example that we have, no? I think there are also recent studies that showcase a correlation between having ESG procedures in place with financial performance, no? Over time, as it's also a mitigant for risk.
Grazie.
Yeah.
Grazie.
Of course. Good. So we've been discussing about ESG, impact, ESG investing, impact investing, but we also have the topic of sustainability, no? That we should not forget about. And this is a topic that is older than ESG and impact investing, that we've been hearing about for many years. And it's super interesting that this term comes from a report from 1987 that then it's been referred to in many cases by different actors, mostly by the World Bank, by IFC, by the UN, different agencies. And it was, for example, the basis for the 2030 agenda and for the definition of the Sustainable Development Goals and so on. And in this report, it comes the first definition of sustainability. And I think it's an interesting definition because it says, and I'm just going to read it, that sustainability is the principle of meeting present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs. That's the definition. So we can read from this that it goes beyond financial markets, applying to business operations, supply chains, resource management, and long-term societal well-being. So it's a bit broader, no? And it's not so focused necessarily on the investment practice as impact investing and ESG is, no? So it's a broader concept that can be applied in different ways, no? But how does it look when we're talking about the area of investing, no? Because we're seeing many funds, different family offices that say we're doing sustainable investing. We see it in different strategies, no? So sustainable investing is investing in assets or companies that contribute to long-term environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Okay, and this is normally thematic. Okay, normally the sustainable strategy focuses on different themes. For example, circular economy, or water, or economic well-being for communities, you know? And it's a bit more broader, also something to take into account, and we're going to be seeing this in the next slides. It does that there's no specific framework to it, or benchmark, but everyone picks a bit of here and there, and it's very linked to ESG in some cases. We will see it in practice in a few slides, just bear with me. Yeah. Entonces, it has a bit more of a systemic focus. It goes beyond individual investments, and it's a broader strategy, you know, mostly focus, and most people choose the themes, for example, by choosing different sustainable development goals, no? So saying, yeah, we're contributing to SDG 1, zero hunger, and this is part of our broader strategy. Good. So here we can see a table outlining the main differences between ESG and sustainable investing, because you might be wondering from what we've been discussing how interrelated they are, no? So to put it in very simple terms, ESG investing is primarily about risk and opportunities. ESG asks ourselves, how do environmental, social, and governance factors affect a company's financial performance or the ability to deliver financial returns in the future, no? While sustainable investing goes a bit farther, and sustainable investing asks ourselves, how does this company or investment contribute to building a sustainable future? Okay, so it's broader, longer term, a bit more systemic, but they're related, okay? So many sustainable investments or investors that claim to have sustainable strategies use also ESG, and they also apply ESG logics into their investment cycles, but the intentionality, the strategy is different, no? So for example, if we look a bit closer to intentionality, ESG investing is most times reactive, no? So it's normally either driven by regulation or driven by risk management, no? I see the importance of how these factors, these environmental, social, and governmental factors can affect the performance of a company, of an investment, and I want to put in place some strategies to mitigate those risks, no? While sustainable investing, it's more proactive. It considers, or it looks at how different assets or companies can have an effect, people and the planet, no? In terms of scope, and this is something that I think you're very familiar with, ESG investing can be applied super broadly. It can be applied to anything. And normally it starts with an exclusion list, okay? So it's not about anything. ESG excludes, no? For example, tobacco, alcohol investments, gambling, or some, the exclusion list can vary, no? But normally considers these types of topics. While in sustainable investing, the scope, it's a bit narrower, no? So it, as I said before, it's normally linked to a theme, no? Circular economy, climate transition, and how it looks in terms of examples can be investing in renewable energy, circular economy, water management funds, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to keep continuing because I'm looking at time, but please, as I said before.
Belen, sorry, a quick one.
Yes.
But a sustainable investment is always an impact investment.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. And we can, here we have the difference. Good. So impact is outward looking. ESG, inward looking. And sustainability, it's normally thematic, mission aligned. So a bit more, I don't want to say it like this, but to put it in very simple terms, a bit more fuzzy. So it has to do more with an alignment in terms of themes, while impact investing has a clear definition, no? So as we said, intentionality, a positive measurable outcome, and additionality. It looks for financial and social and environmental returns. It has frameworks in place. So there are frameworks such as IRIS Plus, Impact Frontiers, while sustainability, it doesn't necessarily look for social and environmental returns. They don't, sustainable investing does not look, for example, to a specific impact KPIs. So for example, a sustainable strategy can be, I'm investing in climate transition, okay? And I invest in renewable energy, in circular economy, in water management, in green bonds, but I don't necessarily have an intentionality around the impact that I want to achieve and also the metrics, right? I don't need to report on how my investments are affecting the different communities or stakeholders, whether the investments that I'm making are generating positive impact on employment or negative, no? Because it can be that by investing in renewable energy, I don't know, I'm investing in a software that automatizes things, and then less jobs are created in a region, while impact investing considers and looks at the positive, negative impact. Yeah, I don't know if I was super clear because I started talking a lot.
Super clear.
Yes? Okay.
No, it's actually the first time that I see these three topics so clearly. So yeah, to me, you're super clear.
Yeah. Good. And I also brought here a bit of a question for debate, but looking also at time, and given that we still have to look at the concrete examples that I think they're interesting, I will move ahead. I also wanted to share with you this graph that I found it very interesting, because of course there's an interconnection, no, between these three terms. They're somehow connected, no, around risk management, reporting, and strategy. No, so in many cases it can be that we have an impact investor that looks at incorporates ESG frameworks into their investment strategy, or we can also see sustainable investments that incorporate some aspects of impact investing. Right, so in reality, in many cases, we see many interrelations between these three practices. Good, but I wanted to bring a very evident and like practical example of ESG investing, no? And this is ESGU, which is exchange-traded fund from BlackRock that is focused on the USA, and it focuses on tracking the extended ESG focus impact index, which includes many companies that are also in the top of the S&P 500. It includes over 280 companies. So we can look at how ESG implements its ESG strategy. So first, it has an exclusion list that excludes sectors like fossil fuels, although it has some exposure, tobacco, and controversial weapons. So I think this is a bit to your question, Massimo, that you were asking before around where the definitions were universal or it was applying to the US, Europe, no? So we can see that, for example, this is an example from the US, and we can see that the exclusion list is not that long, no? And as in many cases, we have a ESG exclusion list in Europe, which, for example, would include I don't know, gambling or other practices, no? So this one, it's very narrow. But what they claim about their ESG strategy is that they go beyond the exclusion list and not only look at companies that are outside this exclusion list, but they claim that they have a very robust scoring system in place that they conduct at the screening stage, and then they later go into the due diligence phase, and they look into companies that have high scores in the ESG scoring. That I think their scoring goes from 1 to 10, so I think they're looking to companies, aiming to companies that go or score higher than 7.35. And they also, I've been reading some of the articles that they have shared around this product and so on, and also rely a bit on the logic of the recent studies that are showing a general positive link between ESG performance and financial performance. It varies a bit geographically. In Europe, there are more evidence because we also have more examples and a bit more track record of this correlation. But yes, this is a bit of an example of how the big players are implementing this. And I also wanted to bring an example from the US, as I know that you're also working a lot on that geography. Again, as I said, we will also have another knowledge field, which will be only focused on how ESG is integrated into the investment cycle, and we will look a bit more into detail on different examples in different geographies and how they score, or and these different implementations, from the ESG point of view. But that said, I wanted to bring a bit this example also to share in contracts another example of a fund. This is Leapfrog Investments, which is one of the most known impact first private equity firms. It focuses, so it's been operating since 2007. It focuses on emerging markets and mostly around essential services. So that is healthcare, financial inclusions, and climate solutions. It delivers strong financial returns with measurable social, environmental returns as well. It has managed to raise over $2 billion and has global investors, including IFC, the European Investment Bank, and some other private investors, several family offices, and so on. In terms of strategy, it focuses on private equity investments that have a clear measurable impact goals. It has reached to date over 200 million low-income consumers across Asia and Africa. In terms of frameworks, they're aligned with IRIS Plus and the SDGs. And as I was saying before, it highlights its intentionality, the ability to measure these outcomes, and also the financial returns. I can talk more and more about the strategy, but I want to show you a bit about the results, no, and how they report impact, no, because it's rather different than the metrics that we've been seeing in ESG, no. So, for example, in one of the sectors that they focus is healthcare. So they look at the impact that the companies have. Okay, so they look at KPIs such as whether the number of quality pharmaceuticals services or products that have been supplied. They look at the number of diagnostic tests provided. They also look at the number of users of digital wellness tools. Here it's also important to remark that Leapfrog also invests in early stage companies in emerging markets, no? And many of them are focusing on health tech solutions. So it's very interesting to see the type of KPIs that they're reporting to their investors, and also interesting to see how they analyze, no, in terms of geographical reach, their impact growth, no, and their impact extent. So, for example, we can see how they look. This is Good Life Pharmacy Stores, which is one of their investees. And here we can see that they report also the growth of their stores and the geographical reach. Normally they highlight in which urban areas they're affecting low-income population they're operating, and the percentage of people that they're targeting that it's underserved or low income. Yeah, so I figured this would be interesting. Also, a quick fact, in terms of their financial performance that they like to show is that in average, their companies or their investees grow 24% revenue annually. And this is like the basis of the thesis for saying that they're contributing also to significant employment creation and also economic uplift. So focusing in emerging markets and underserved areas within these markets. Yeah, if any questions, please interrupt me. And then
super helpful to actually see some examples on how impact investors are actually reporting some of the metrics that they believe they're important to them. Because I mean, even for us, these examples spark in my mind so many different things that we can, I wouldn't say measure, but let's say try to go into the direction of reporting some of the impact things that we do, or let's say that the funds in which we invest.
Totally. No, it's super interesting. At the end, in the final slide, I've included a list of some reports and links that if anyone wants to dig a bit deeper, we'll be sharing them. So, an example of a sustainable strategy. As I was saying, sustainable strategy can be much broader. It's normally thematic, and it can be applied almost to anything. No, so here I chose to showcase a very evident example, which is Unilever, that, as we know, is one of the world's largest consumer goods company. So Unilever has a very well-known sustainability strategy, and they claim it to be a key element of their business, and their strategy focused on climate action, sustainable sourcing, plastic and packaging, and health and well-being. So as we can see, this is very thematic. It's a bit broad, and also somehow linked to their business, because sustainable sourcing, they're looking at the ingredients that they use. So, for example, at the sustainable sourcing of palm oil, soil, paper, also plastic and packaging. It's also very linked to their business. Looking to incorporate recyclable and reusable compostage, and they have set targets to achieve there. But they don't have any specific framework or tools or benchmarks or to do this, and this is a bit how they speak about it, I thought it was interesting to include this snapshot from their webpage that I think is one of the first things that you see when you start looking at this huge company, at these giants, saying that this is part of their business model and that they're looking at this as a competitive advantage, and also as a differentiating element from their competitors. So I think with these examples, looking at BlackRock's ESU, at Leapfrog, and that broader sustainability strategy, we can see a bit in practice the elements that were outlined in the table here, Good. And also, I wanted to briefly speak, I want to be mindful of time. Why do these topics matter now? So a bit to your point, Massimo. So I think, or at least there are some figures that showcase that there's a growing investor demand. So Morningstar says that the sustainable fund assets are growing. Again, let's remember that sustainable, it's a bit broad. We would need to look into what it really means, because it can really mean a bit of everything. It can be a thematic fund. It can be, so these figures need to be read with some careful considerations. We're also seeing a trend of the newer generations, they're coming and that have a preference in investing into more sustainable options. And then there's the regulatory pressure and the transparency demands, So as we're seeing, the sustainable financial disclosure regulation, so SFDR, it's already enacted, it's already in place. And the idea or why it is now in place is to avoid greenwashing and to help investors make better and more informed choices about where their money goes. We will also have a session on impact washing, sustainable washing, greenwashing, where we can look a bit more into this, how to recognize it, and analyze some of the core examples or cases that we've been seeing in the past years. But basically, as we all know, SFDR covers financial companies, so banks, fund managers, insurance companies, and differentiates between 3 types of products, Article 6, which is the case of Rancilio Cube, Article 8, that focuses on products that promote environmental or social change. Normally, Article 8, it's more linked to ESG, and then we have Article 9, that normally it's how impact funds are labeled in Europe, okay? So it's a step farther than Article 8. So SFDR is born with the idea of having a standard approach, and it applies currently across the EU, And then we also have some other disclosure rules, such as CSRD and the SIC disclosure rule. Good, and I know we have 3 minutes, so I wanted to wrap up and not take much of your time, So to put it super simple, super practical, how can we summarize the differences between ESG, impact, and sustainability? So ESG can be thought about risk plus opportunity lens, impact, intentional change, and measurable incomes, and sustainability, long-term and more systemic, about the contribution to the overall society and system health. And as we've been seeing, these are mutually exclusive and they complement one another. So I will pause here to see if there are any questions, reactions. I will be sharing these materials with you, and I'm also including some useful reports and other informations for those interested in reading a bit more about these topics. And of course, I'm available via email if anyone has any questions or wants to follow up with any debate or ideas. Super happy to further exchange as well.
Grazie mille, Belen. I mean, as the first session was super packed with topics, but I think it's the right direction to actually, let's say, cast a new light on a topic that we ourselves have been covering since the beginning of Rancilio Cube CCAF. But let's say, taking a different angle, a more practical angle, or an angle that incorporates all these different definitions and bring them down to earth in a way, is definitely the best way to actually spark some new ideas also in us.
Super. Thank you all, and looking forward to the next session.
Grazie
Thanks a
mille.
lot.
Ciao.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Belen.
Thank
Ciao.
you,
Thank
Brian.
you. Ciao, guys.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you, Ben.